Hey guys, this is Camus, and we're continuing our coverage of Michael Basman's performance in the recent Atkins tournament in Torquay. This was in August of this year, 2013. And let's get right to the game. Basman's playing John Carlton, who's a master. He's rated 2254, so he's actually the strongest opponent that Basman meets in this tournament. Let's see how the game proceeded. White played d4, h6, e4, a6. So we've got another Creepy-Crawly. Let's see how Basman handles it this time. Okay, White decides to grab as big a center as he can. He plays c4, but Basman immediately chips away with c5. Now White has got no way to maintain this pawn, so he decides to take it off, figuring it's going to cost Black a little bit of time to recapture it. D takes c5, e6, and now he plays bishop to e3, which is a good move. b4 would not be good here because of a5, b5, and bishop takes c5, and that's just Black is already equalized. Another possibility is after b4, Black could perhaps play queen to f6, and perhaps he was afraid of this, but it doesn't work out because after queen to c2, queen takes a1, bishop to b2, queen takes a2, knight c3, the queen is now trapped. However, there's another wrinkle in this line. Say after b4, he tries a5, which is the better move, and instead of b5, he plays bishop b takes a5. Well, now queen to f6 does work because after queen to c2, queen to a1 takes a1, bishop to b2, queen to a2, knight c3, and the queen is not trapped in this line. He can just take the pawn, and he's winning. So anyway, none of those things happened. After Basman played e6, his opponent played bishop to e3, develops a piece, and still holding on to this pawn. I'm sure he knows that he can't realistically hold on to it, but he's got to make Black jump through a hoop or two to get it. So knight to c3, and now Basman takes the pawn off. Now in this position, the natural move is recapturing the bishop, but actually Rybka prefers queen to g4 with a likely line, bishop to f8 to protect the g-pawn. White castles queenside, knight to f6, queen to g3, queen to g3, h takes g3, and it considers that White has a small advantage here. So instead of queen to g4, he plays bishop takes c5. Naturally, Black recaptures, knight to f3, knight to c6, bishop to e2, knight to f6, castles. And as Steve Farmer's pointed out, many of these openings, such as the crazy Basman openings, start out life as being relatively insane, but become more conventional middle game positions. Here we've reached a middle game position where Black is a little behind on development, and he's got a problem with his bishop on c8. However, you would think the natural move in this position might be to castle kingside, or play something like a b5 or b6 to develop the c8 bishop. But Basman, in typical style, lashes out with g5, and this is something he commonly does in the Creepy-Crawly opening, keeping his king in the center, or at the last minute making a dash to the queen side, and attacking on the king side with the g5 thrust. And this is related to his Grob and Borg type strategy too. So g5 was played. Now White plays a3 here. I guess the idea is to gain some space on the queen side and knock the queen around a couple of blocks. So, but he could have played, instead of a3, which is what he could have played e5. That's an interesting try, because after knight takes e5, this is a pawn sacrifice. Knight to a4, knight takes f3 check, bishop takes f3, queen to e7. He plays c5. And after castles, White's down a pawn, but this pawn on c5 is cramping black's development. The knight is also threatening to jump into b6, and this bishop on c8 looks pretty bad for the time being. In addition, black's king doesn't look too secure over there. Anyway, he didn't play this. So he played in the position after g5. He played a3. And of course, Basman just gets on with it. Plays g4. White continues with his plan, b4. And now queen to h5. Now the knight has to move, so knight to e1. And this queen comes running around again to e5. This is similar, kind of similar to the last game that we looked at, where the queen caused a lot of consternation on the fourth rank, running back and forth. So the knight on c3 is loose, so he has to do something about it. He plays queen to d3. And now he could have won a pawn here. Black could have won a pawn. But he made the more prudent choice. He played b6. If he'd played knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen takes a1, knight to d6 check, king to f8, bishop takes g4, queen to d4, bishop to h5, queen takes d3, knight takes d3, a b5, c5, and white looks a lot better here. This bishop looks like it might never enter the game, and this knight on d6 is killer. I guess another alternative, after knight to d3, black could have played f5, but still doesn't look so good after c5. So he didn't avail himself of that opportunity, wisely so. He recognized that he needs to get this bishop out, because if he doesn't do it now, this bishop may get buried. So he plays b6, and now white plays a good move. He plays f4, and after this, Rybka assesses the position as white having a substantial advantage. Now, as is so often the case, and this has happened really all through Basman's career, he gets into a dodgy position out of the opening and then hangs in there and fights his way back. Generally, when he's on the run, he starts playing good moves, and that happens in this game too. So after f4, he plays queen to d4, exchanging queens. Queen takes d4, knight takes d4, bishop to d3, a5, knight to c2, knight takes c2, bishop takes c2, d6, rook a to d1, king to e7, knight to b5. Now this looks like a strong move, but perhaps he should have played rook f to e1. Rybka likes this better. After knight to b5, he loses some of his advantage in the following manner. Black plays a takes b4, and white recaptures. Now he could, instead of taking back on b4, he could take this loose pawn on d6, but it doesn't really seem like a good idea. After knight takes d6, bishop takes a3, b takes a3, and this pawn is dangerous. Black is better here. Alternatively, after a takes b4, you could take with the rook, and this also looks not as clear. Bishop to a6, threatening to take the knight and then take the rook. Rook to b6, bishop takes b5, rook to b7 check, knight to d7, c takes b5, and now white has a pass pawn. B takes a3, both sides have pass pawns. Rook to d1, so the knight must be protected. e5, a2, rook a1, rook a3, b6, rook c8, rook to a7, rook to a8, rook takes a8. This is a long line. Rook takes a8, b7, rook to a3, king to f2, and Rybka seems to think this is going to be a draw. So it certainly looks like a dangerous position for both sides. Okay, so none of this occurred. White played the sensible recapture, After a takes b4, he played a takes b4. And now Rybka likes rook to d8, but Basman played the natural move rook to a2, getting a pig on the 7th. And now bishop to b1, hitting the rook, rook to b2. And now knight takes d6. Now it's safe for white to take this pawn now. And he's got this, this knight is dangerously placed on the board. Definitely white is better in this position. But Basman's not down for the count. So knight to d7, e5, it's cementing that knight right in place. Basman plays f5, f6 was also possible. White takes off, knight takes f6, rook f e1. And this pawn looks a bit weak. Bishop to d7. Now knight to f5, check. Black plays king to f7 here. Now he's achieved a clear advantage here, but now he starts to falter, and a few inaccurate moves, and the game turns completely around. What he should have played here is knight to e3, and then after h5, b5, rook to a8, bishop to c2, rook a to a2, looks dangerous, rook e to e2, bishop to c8, rook to d6, knight to e4, rook takes b6. White's two connected pass pawns look like they might decide the game. So this is probably what he should have gone for, but instead he plays the natural enough looking move, knight to d4. This is after king to f7. Knight to d4. And here Rybka prefers bishop to a4 than what Basman played. Basman played rook to c8, but it's not bad. And now a second inaccurate move from white. He plays f5, and Basman plays the surprising e5. Good move. Probably was a surprise to white, and of course he takes the pawn. But now, after rook takes c4, the position is now equal, and black is threatening rook takes b1. Naturally, if rook takes b1, rook takes rook, and then rook takes knight is winning for black. So this was Basman's idea. So after rook takes c4, he plays knight to e6, getting the knight out of the danger zone there. And now Basman plays bishop to a4. And let's see, consider how you would reply for white. Okay, if you chose rook d to e1, you have good positional sense, because after rook c takes b4, we have a dead equal position. And that's not what Basman's opponent played. He played the unfortunate bishop to d3, which looks cosmetically like it's okay, but it's losing, because after rook to c3, Basman plays very accurately from this point in the game. As I said, once he gets his back against the wall, he can be formidable. So rook to c3, and now white could have played rook to b1 here, but it's not any better. Rook takes b1, bishop takes b1, and now this is winning, of course, picking up the bishop. So after rook to c3, he plays rook e to e1. Basman takes off the rook. He recaptures, knight to d5, bishop to b5. And now Basman plays another good move. He plays knight to e3, knight to b4. Excuse me, knight takes b4 was not as strong. Basman finds the strongest move, knight to e3. And now a final act of desperation from white. He plays bishop to e8, check, hoping for some tricks. Now Basman plays king to g8 just to avoid any of the tricks, but he could have actually captured the bishop after something like king takes e8, rook to e1, rook takes g2 check, and that's just winning. So after bishop to e8, king to g8, rook to e1, And of course, rook takes g2 check, king to h1, rook to d2, and white resigned. Another victory for Basman, although I wouldn't say that the opening did him any favors. It was only by his strong play after he started to get into a bad position that he won this game. But anyway, he's 3-0 in this tournament, and hopefully you will tune in and catch the excitement of round 4. Thank you for watching.